Hello and welcome to yet another episode of Beyond the Deal. Today on the show, my guest is Amy Cooper, who I actually know back from my very first property. She was the property manager. She was working for CalCap, our original property management company. But since then, she has actually left the world of corporate property management and moved into the world of glamping and RV parks. And so in today's episode, we really kind of have a masterclass in breaking down how that whole industry works. I ask her a bunch of questions because I'm very interested in this topic myself, and it relates to the deal that I have going on as well right now. So if you've ever been interested in this topic, I think you're going to get a ton of value out of this episode. So without further ado, let's get into the episode. Amy Cooper, welcome to the show. You and I have known each other for what, probably 5 years now, maybe? Quite a while. So it's been long overdue, but so happy to have you here. So for our guests who maybe don't know anything about you and what you got going on, why don't you tell them a little bit about what you're trying to do right now?
Thank you. Yeah. So I'm co-founder of a company called GlampHER, and we buy cash flowing RV parks in destination locations. And then we come in and we add glamping. So we're in several markets. We're in Texas, Colorado, Tennessee, and Arkansas currently in specific markets in those areas. But that's where we're scaling. So that's what I've been up to, having a really good time doing it. So
You and I have been needing to catch up. Actually, I'm buying a short-term rental thing in Arkansas as well right now. So I'm sure we'll have plenty to chat about there in the market. But why don't you tell everybody a little bit about how you got to this place? So obviously, I met you in the context of property management, but tell us a little bit about how you got started in the world of real estate in general.
yeah, absolutely. So my background has always been in the paint world. So I started my career way back in the 90s and with Glidden paint. And from there, went to kind of all the big paint manufacturers, and was working on the real estate side when I was in paint. So helping large companies repaint buildings through paint contractors, connecting the two. And then got into commercial construction and got into a much more specific role in that it was a national GC that I was repping for. And as that wrapped up, I started working for CalCap Properties, property management firm, local to Phoenix. And at the time, they were wanting to go out with a third party fee management offering, which they only had 600 units at the time. And then I grew them to about 6,000 units at the peak. So during that time, it was a really great time for me. I had just started on the side doing flips here in Phoenix with my daughter and really enjoying that, and then wanting to scale. And really, I had the opportunity to get around a lot of people that were doing a lot of big things in multifamily. I was able to talk to a lot of owners, a lot of syndicators, a lot of investors, and really understand that business and see how it worked. In that space, I just didn't feel like that business, multifamily specifically, that type, like buying and value adding multifamily was my niche. I didn't feel it. And I had always been very intrigued with manufactured housing and RV park because the premise is you own dirt and people pay you for dirt. And I just loved that, especially as I was bringing in clients to the property management world, watching our managers and our regionals and watching all the nuances of multifamily, the toilets, the trash, the tenants and everything that you had to deal with. So RV parks were very exciting for me because with an RV park, it's a daily rate. You're not having people sign leases. So when people come in, it's really treated like the hospitality world. And that is, if they do something that you don't want at your park, you can say goodbye. They're on wheels. They can go away fairly quickly. And so it was very intriguing to me as I started learning that business. And I bought my first park in Texas. It just so happened to be a 77-acre safari and RV ranch. So not only did I buy an RV park, but I kind of bought a zoo. So it was very fun intro to the business.
Yeah, I mean, love the photos. What Jack the Donkey, right? That's his name.
It's actually George.
George.
And you probably, it's Jack Spurl George is his handle, and that's our Instagram page for the property. So yeah, George lives in Jacksboro, Texas.
Got it. So you basically had all this experience. You learned all these lessons watching people like me, suffer through, the tenants and the toilets and everything that's involved with a multifamily offering. And it's not for everyone. It's certainly not for the faint of heart. There's a lot of things that go wrong. There's a lot of things that you got to fix. Tenants are not always kind to the property, and sometimes they don't want to leave either, right? So you found an asset class where essentially you saw all of these things going wrong and found a solution for them. So how does one even go about finding an RV park in the first place, and what made you settle on a zoo?
On a zoo? Well, honestly, I'm from Dallas Fort Worth, and it's about an hour and a half outside of Dallas Fort Worth. And George the donkey, I fell in love with him. So those were two of the biggest components. But honestly, it was for me, it was seller financing. And that is one of the reasons why I really like this asset class as well. It has not been institutionalized, which there's pros and cons to everything. The pro for that is there's a lot of mom and pops that own these parks, and they don't have historicals. They don't have a lot of financials. A lot of them are buying new cars and houses and going on grandiose vacations because their cash flow is so good, but they're not keeping really tight books. In fact, one of the first parks that I closed on, at the closing table, we received a deck of cards, note cards, recipe cards that had the next reservations on them. So a lot of these mom and pops don't keep great books because they haven't really had to. Some of them have built from ground up. And so when we take over that park, and actually when we find out about the park and we're looking at the park and doing due diligence, because we really understand, my business partner and I had both owned parks previously before starting GlampHER, we're very well versed at what this really looks like. We know how to do the research. And what we do on our side is then we bring the technologies in when we close so that all of this is trackable and all of it is, analyzed. So in the multifamily world, you have Yardi, and in the RV world, you have other technologies. Ours that we use is CampSpot. So we immediately get the park on CampSpot. So, but back to your question, usually, a lot of it is word of mouth. You can find some of these through brokers. Obviously there's RV park brokers. My business partner was a broker prior to us coming together, and she had her hand on a lot of different owners and knows the business really well. So we've been blessed to have her knowledge as well as relationships through that to help us determine, where we want to go. Now that we've got 7 parks underneath us, we've got people that kind of reach out to us. So it's been great because people know what we're looking for the most part and kind of give us a heads up.
Yeah, so many questions I want to ask through all that. First of all, so if everybody is basically not keeping records, lots of mom and pop owners, they've owned it forever. How do you even go about underwriting something like this? You know the daily rate and you know projections, and that's kind of it. You don't have any historicals to go off of.
You don't have a lot of historicals, which is why we're really focused on destination locations. When you have a destination location, that there's a certain amount of people that are coming to that area. For instance, Pigeon Forge. Pigeon Forge, we bought a small park in Pigeon Forge last year, 2024. And we know 11 million people a year come to that area to visit. And our park is 4 miles away from Dollywood, and it's walking distance to the strip. While we don't know the exact component of that park, and quite honestly, when we buy a park that has maybe been mismanaged or not managed well, we are kind of starting from scratch anyway. But we have the bones and we've got all of the amenities. We're upscaling. We're adding glamping too. That's another entire business focus. We look at what we have there, we look at the utilities, we add to the utilities, upscale the amenities, and add glamping. So when we do due diligence, we're looking at the utilities, we're looking at the rates, we're really looking at the community and what it can bring and bear. We also have our CampSpot partnership that we actually can ask them, hey, what are you seeing in this area? One of the things that I do, one of my biggest jobs with our group is construction. And so I'm talking to vendors in this business, in the RV park as well as glamping business. And those vendors are typically working with parks all across the country. So I'm able to glean some information from them as well to say, hey, how do you think how is it going with this person using this product? And what have you heard? So we actually don't do a really quick due diligence. We're usually doing about a 30, 60, potentially 90-day due diligence, depending on what type of historicals we've gotten from these groups.
So due diligence is a great question here, right? Because I understand maybe there's some existing amenities, but maybe you want to have a business plan for what you want to do to improve the property. I do want to ask you about what sort of amenities you typically require or look for or create draws for the guests. But essentially, there's no building to inspect. There's no, I guess maybe there's a little bit of plumbing and electrical, but what does due diligence even look like on one of these?
So all of our parks do have buildings because we have an office building, we have a laundry facility, and we have shower houses or locker rooms or bathhouses, whatever, what have you. So we do have those buildings, and we do have to make sure that those are, workable. So you're looking at a roof, you're doing a typical inspection with that. But then you're also bringing out a septic inspector and you're having the septic system looked at. You're talking to the people who have serviced that system. The one crazy thing I had no clue about with septic system is you can literally have 4 to 5 contacts with one system because the person who installed it isn't the person who cleans it out, isn't the person who might fix the plumbing part or even the motor or that what have you. So you can have anywhere from 1 to 5 different people that are going to be working on one system. So you're really learning who the vendors are in that area, who you're going to talk to, what has that system been doing so far, and what is it capable of doing in the future. Electric's the same thing. You're really taking a look at each individual site because you need 30 and 50 amp, and you're not only are you taking a look at that, but you're also looking at any type of expansion that would be needed and how easy, how expensive, what does that look like. So it's a lot more rigorous, I would say, than a multifamily due diligence because multifamily is pretty cut and dry. You're not usually on a septic, you're usually city water, city sewer. And I'll be honest with you, when we find a park that's on city water, city sewer, we're like, yay, it's even better, right? Because those things are easier to manage too.
So now, have you bought any of these parks, any of these seven, with anything but owner financing? Have you gone out and gotten any sort of traditional financing? And are you raising capital to do these deals?
So yes and yes. So we have gotten financing on a couple of them. It's not easy. It is, again, it's not an institutionalized asset class. So a lot of banks, they have a hard time getting their arms around it because it's a real estate and a business. There's two things going on here. And so they really, some of them, there are a few across the country that especially local banks that really know the project and know the property have been helpful. And so the majority of what we do, again, seller financing, but yes, we raise capital. So, and that is also what I'm in charge of. So my business partner, Sierra, handles all the acquisitions and operations, and I handle all the capital raising and construction. And so we're out on podcasts, doing webinars. Most of our raise has been 506B. The most recent raise is 506C, and we are actually interviewing this week. We're kind of going through final rounds with a couple of groups that really want to come in and be our capital partner. So, because of the way we've grown and because of the potential for our growth, we've gotten a couple of family offices and another big player who's really interested in what we're doing and wants to come in and really kind of support the GlampHER brand and what we're.
Yeah, and I'll just do a little quick clarification for our listeners. So 506B, meaning friends and family money only. You cannot advertise. You cannot tell anybody you don't know the first time you know them that you're raising money, but anybody can invest. 506C, only accredited investors can invest, but you can go on Facebook, you can go whenever, tell the world you have a deal. Now, family office money is the golden goose in this world, right? It is slow money, patient money, big checks, one person, one investor. If you raise $5 million, 50K at a time, that's 100 investors, right? That could be a lot of headaches depending.
Right, right. It's a lot of communication.
It's a lot of communication. One family office can come in. You don't even have to syndicate. They can just do a JV or just be your capital partner. That is the golden goose. So props to you for getting there. That's, really the secret to scale once you've done enough of these. Hey, really quick, thank you for watching this episode. I wanted to interrupt for just a second to let you know that if you have ever considered raising capital for real estate deals like I do, my course is now on sale for just $250. That's right, lifetime access for just $250. You get access to all the scripts, all the processes, all the tech, all the marketing. I will teach you everything you need to know in my video course. You can use the link below to check it out. You can hear testimonials from other students. Most of my students are raising an average of 500,000 in their first few months. Some of them have raised 1.5 million. All right, so if you've ever considered doing this, go ahead and click the link below. And if you are interested in one-on-one coaching, that is also something that we can talk about. You can book a call with me. All right, let's get back to the episodes. Now, how
Thanks.
big is one of these deals typically? How much capital are you usually trying to raise? And, I imagine with no building on site, how much value is the land, right? I guess it depends where, but deal size.
So they range anywhere from 2 million. I mean, we've got a couple of deals that are big, they're 10 to 12 million. It really just depends on what we're doing, what we're taking down, and what the construction budget looks like. Some of our properties, we've got one that we're under contract for that we've got quite an extensive build out. It's an older park. We're going to add RV sites as well as about 25 glamping sites and a wedding venue. So a lot of, and that's the other thing. We're buying places that have a lot of space, right? A lot of acreage. 77 is pretty big. That's my first one. Most of them are anywhere from 4 acres to, I would say, probably 10 acres, although the Beaver Lake property that we just closed on in Arkansas is 26 acres. So with that, comes opportunity, right? And that's what we're super excited. We're excited about growing and looking at solar opportunities, maybe cell phone tower opportunities, storage opportunities, because we have the space at certain properties. And I don't know if I answered your question exactly, but
I mean, it's different deal by deal, and
yeah,
that's
for sure.
typical. But it's not insignificant amount of capital. I was thinking maybe it'd be a million here, 2 million there. No, these can be really big raises for really big properties. Plus, you may need to do a lot of things. In my Arkansas deal as well, we're doing glamping, wedding venue, all that kind of stuff. Most of the budget is
Yep,
going to that. Yeah, and so really
exactly,
preaching to the
exactly.
choir here.
And you're in Eureka Springs, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, we're about an hour away from each other.
yeah,
So
very
really
nice.
close.
Yeah,
Yeah.
those Ozarks are so beautiful. Lots of
Gorgeous.
space.
And Eureka Springs is just the most charming little place. I love Eureka Springs.
We do too. Now, as you've scaled and as you've grown this to over 7 parks, what have kind of you noticed have been the main differences as far as the management in this kind of short-term rental, no building model versus your background in multifamily?
Right. So, not as many boots on the ground needed. I will say that. Obviously, depending on the size of the multifamily. But the way we typically manage is we do have people that live on property. So that's a big difference because usually multifamily, you don't have somebody living there. So we'll have an on-site manager who lives on site, and it's usually couples. Honestly, there's a lot of people out there. Some of them retired, some of them even younger, but you've got one of the couples really wants to do the office work and wants to answer phones and meet guests and do all that, and then the other one is more of a maintenance focused. So we really, that's what we're looking for. That's who we're bringing to the table. We're finding people that know the area really well. And then with camping and glamping in these parks, obviously we have a higher some seasonality, right? So from May to say September, honestly, October's a really busy month for camping because it's such a great time. It's, the fall leaves and the seasons are changing. So a lot of people want to be out in the environment to experience that. So the season is usually about May through October, and you get work campers for that. So there's an entire community of people that call themselves work campers, and they travel around every year to different places, and they know the business. Most of them know these systems. A lot of them are beginning to understand and know CampSpot and some of the other technologies that we utilize at these parks. And they just love the business. And they get to change their environment every year by going to a different park. So we are looking, one of the things that we're creating, because we have more scale and more parks, is creating our own work campers, kind of a little force of our own that can just travel around to each of our different properties. And they're getting very excited about it. So when we interview people, they're like, oh my gosh, where are your parks? And we tell them, and they're just very excited because we're in Pigeon Forge near all the actions. We're in Beaver Lake, right on the lake. We've got 10
Oh,
boat slips. There's some really cool opportunities for people to
wow.
travel and see beautiful parts of the world,
Oh man, you're
country.
super, super close to us. I didn't realize you were Beaver Lake. Yeah,
Oh yeah, we're at Beaver Lake.
that's awesome. That was the most crystal clear blue water I think I've seen in a very long time.
It's it is spectacular. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, this is kind of a two-part question. Are people, when they rent from you, are they doing more of a long-term thing, or is it like a hotel? Is it really kind of short term, or can it be kind of a mix of both? And, are you doing dynamic pricing? How does that work?
So yes, on dynamic pricing, we have that set in our system to whenever the occupancy gets to a certain level, it kicks in. So usually when you get to maybe 70 or 80% occupancy in a given segment, then it'll kick in some dynamic pricing. And yes, to the long-term, short-term, and glamping. So most of our parks, not all of them, but most of them have a long-term or seasonal component. So we'll have a certain percentage, 15 to 20%, that we allow long-term people to stay. There's a lot of people that live in their RVs. There's workers that work in the healthcare system. Sometimes it's road workers. Sometimes it's air turbine workers. And then you have some you've got traveling nurses, you've got, we've had teachers that live on property. We've had police officers, that live on property. It's amazing to me how many people homeschool their children now. And so they're traveling around and they want a place to stay for 4, 6 months, maybe even a year. So we do have a component of that at most of our parks. And then we have the short-term component, which they're coming in for a couple weeks, or they're coming in for a long weekend. Holidays, obviously really big. And then the glamping is really short-term, true short-term. So there is some diversity within our portfolio, and each park has its own. And we even, at my park in Texas, I have a small area that's storage area as well, that I have income coming in from storage. So
Wow.
you can kind of have a little bit of everything depending on the property. And the other caveat to that is we really try to keep things segmented. So the long-term people kind of are in one area, the short-term RVs are in another area, and then the glampers are in another area. Because again, you want to create experience. You want people to feel like, hey, this is what my peers is, what everybody around me is doing. You wouldn't really want to commingle all of that. So we really make sure that we're creating those environments and to offer that feel for our guests.
Awesome. All right. And now, as we approach the end of the episode, I always like to ask our guests a little bit about their mental and physical health, because you've grown this, you left the world of corporate real estate, so to speak, and you moved into being an entrepreneur. And now you've scaled it up into 7 parks and it's grown into this big operation. So how do you stay sane? Are you sleeping well at night?
Absolutely. That's kind of my biggest thing. Sleeping well at night, and part of that is I'm pretty religious with working out. If I'm not getting to the gym, I'm going for a walk and getting 10,000 steps in, or at least 8. And, as I've learned more and more about just nutrition, I would say it's really our bodies and our brains work so much better when we're giving it the proper nutrition. And I was probably say over the last couple years, really cut down on my alcohol intake. I feel a lot sharper. If I have a really stressful day, I try to get out and take a walk and kind of think through things and take some big deep breaths versus, a couple glasses of wine. And I feel a lot better the next day, and I sleep better. So not the popular opinion, although I think it's becoming more and more popular the more we find out. But yeah, I would attribute that to being able to stay sharp and on top of things, as well as at the end of every day, I try to create a list of what are my tasks that I've got to capture tomorrow, no fail. And so that I can kind of release and let go and walk away from everything. And then when I get back into it the next day, I've got that right there ready to go. There's no, well, where was I? What was I doing? Kind of thing.
Awesome. Yeah. So, the purpose of this question is I rarely have guests say anything that actually shocks me, but for the benefit of our listeners, listen, people, the successful ones are all doing the same thing, right? You know better. All right, Amy, thank you so much for coming to this episode.
Thanks, Michael. Great talking to you. Talk again soon.
That's a wrap for today's episode of Beyond the Deal. I hope you got some valuable insights that you can apply to your own investing journey. Now, if you've enjoyed this conversation, do me a favor, hit that follow button, leave a review, and share this episode with somebody who you think could benefit from it. It really helps the show grow and bring on even more incredible guests. If you want to go deeper, make sure to follow me on your socials. You can find the links in the show notes in the description below. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll catch you next time. Until then, keep going beyond the deal.